Before an enthralling game against Valencia tomorrow, it seems kind of fitting to have a deep dive into the kind of tactics Valencia would use against us. What is the philosophy behind Jose Bordalas? In this video, we'll find out. So stick until the end and let's begin. Let's start by having a look at the formation he used during his time at Getafe and the formation he uses now in Valencia. In this video, we'll use his time at Getafe as a blueprint to discuss his philosophy. Getafe were widely recognized as being committed to the most organized of 4-4-2 formations. They favored a direct approach that relied on them complementing their positional discipline with winning possession either from a direct ball or by collecting the resulting second or third ball. Players were encouraged to be close to those balls as a unit and thus in possession to press and regain possession if necessary. They were capable of producing link play to combat opponents favoring a lower block, but doing so was not their favored form of attack. They instead looked to advance from defensive transitions with speed and intensity while prioritizing the spaces in behind opposing central defenders or between central defender and fullback and playing towards their front two. Nemanja Maksimovic and Marc Cucurella were prominent among those supporting those attacks. Cucurella particularly sought to play crosses into the penalty area towards the front two of Jaime Mata. Getafe registered the lowest ball possession in La Liga during 2017-18 and 2018-19 season and remained among the lowest in the two following seasons until Jose Bordalas' departure. When regains were made, they quickly targeted the front two that featured one striker, threatening on the shoulder of the deepest possession defender and other being more withdrawn to link play, having also been contributing in central midfield when they were without the ball. The strikers regularly recorded Getafe's highest number of assists because of their ability to combine without support from the midfielders behind them, and their movements meant regular direct forward passes were played. Only Eibar recorded more long passes than Getafe in La Liga during Bordalas' 4 seasons as manager. That the front two attacked closely together to compete for aerial balls and target the second phase of play regardless meant spaces emerging around them for, most commonly, Getafe's wide midfielders to run into and support from, though when the team's overall priority was to preserve their sense of balance. It was from towards the left that Mata and Molina were consistently targeted. Alan Neom, a natural fullback, often featured as their right-sided midfielder and proved limited in the attacking half. From the left, Cucurella regularly attacked around the outside of their opposition and then delivered crosses or played quick and incisive forward passes, and Amat Ndiaye dribbled and attacked one-on-one, but his contributions were mostly unlike those of his teammates. Valencia so far have also placed an increased emphasis on playing long passes and attacking crosses, and have done so from a 4-4-2 led by Maxi Gomez, and among those long passes are those played into wide territories and those directly into their front two, like those played by Getafe. Given only Gomez and not Guedes is authoritative in the air, those sent wide have often been significant and lost shape breaking forward from their defensive block. Guedes' presence ensures more rotation than had been witnessed at Getafe. He regularly drifts wide from a central starting position from which he supports from behind Gomez, and he does so one of their wide midfielders move in field to replace him centrally and preserve their front two. There are also occasions that those wide players move in field to encourage overlaps from and ultimately the creation of overlaps with the fullbacks behind them Jose Gaya and Dimitri Fulker have. Like Guedes regularly delivered crosses into the penalty area from wide territory. Getafe's commitment to a team approach, their organization, conditioning, and cohesion involved a collective effort to press and then regain possession. Their entire 11 commonly defended in a mid and low block, particularly during home fixtures, and therefore operated a very high tempo that meant leaving few spaces for opponents to penetrate through their structure or to build attacks in wide possession. If an opponent succeeded in doing so, Getafe responded by again attempting to reduce the relevant spaces before prioritizing regaining possession with numbers and defensive overloads. If there was a consistency to their approach in the period after Bordalas' appointment, there were also tweaks that demonstrated it was subtly evolving. Throughout 2019-20, the defensive block was positioned further up the pitch than had previously been the case, largely because of the security offered by the presence of Jose, whose athleticism and positional awareness made him capable of correcting imbalances that may have existed in their defense. The ability to recover was complemented by so few mistakes being made in central midfield, where 𝒉𝒐𝒎𝒆 and Mauro Arambari held their possession and encouraged those around them to continue pressing in the attacking half. What was often the narrowest of midfield lines worked hard from the same out of possession 4-4-2 to shuffle across the pitch with a similar level of organization and discipline seen with Atletico Madrid under Diego Simeone. One of their front two pressed from behind the ball to support in midfield and potentially allow his teammates to recover their desired balance against opposing midfield threes and to provide an additional angle of pressure to the ball. Their wide midfielders similarly moved infield to support the aggressive press Bordalas demanded in central territory, and often pressed slightly ahead of the two central midfielders between them because of the latter's desire to protect the spaces between the lines and their central defensive teammates. That their front two remained braced to make forward runs, and in doing so drew opponents with them after regains were made, often enhanced Getafe's ability to secure the ball. When they were adopting a lower defensive block, their strikers worked back most regularly to goal side of the opposing defensive midfielder to withdraw into deeper territory, and their wide midfielders to tuck infield and cover spaces in the center of the pitch. In the event of opponents attempting to progress through central territory, Getafe's defensive block retreated further, and they applied an aggressive individual press intended to make regains instead of force possession elsewhere. Should the ball travel wide, their intensity regardless slightly reduced and was only heightened again if the ball reached their defensive third, at which point their fullback would aggressively advance with the support of a wide midfielder, and their central midfielders worked to cover spaces in field and potentially replace the relevant fullback in their defensive line. Those same mid and lower blocks and that out of possession 4-4-2 have since been adopted by Valencia. Daniel Vos and Hugo Guillamon have been influential in applying the aggressive pressure Bordalas seeks in central midfield, and in protecting the central spaces, potentially via withdrawing into their defensive line, and the overall narrow defensive block that exists contributes to possession being forced wide, where Valencia's fullbacks then engage. As was also often seen at Getafe, Valencia's front two adopt staggered positions from which to defend their opposing defensive midfielder. But unlike at Getafe, there have been occasions when one player remained advanced even as a low block has been adopted. Gomez has, in those circumstances, represented their direct target when they are countering forwards from deep territory, and Guedes has provided support in central midfield but remained capable of moving wide and to potentially pursue spaces in behind an advanced fullback, in turn making his wider runs an alternative target when they break.